Hi everyone, welcome back to the Satoshi Chain. My name is Adam, and we're going to be talking about digital scarcity, in particular how NFTs might change marketing. Let's dive into it. So pre-2009, the release of Bitcoin, unlike physical goods, right, digital goods lacked inherent scarcity, and blockchain and NFTs solved this. So before 2009, an NFT's attempt to create digital scarcity was mostly centralized, flawed, and easily bypassed. You see here we've got CDs, used to be a thing, huge thing in the 2000s, as well as a little picture of LimeWire at the bottom, my head's covering. Digital right management and keys. So just a little run through of this. Companies like Apple, Microsoft, Sony, they used a digital right management to restrict copying, but it was easily cracked, and there were cracked versions all over the place. And also the users hated the restrictions. They felt like they bought the physical goods that then had digital media on it, and they should be able to use it however they'd like. I remember back in the day, I was copying DVDs, CDs for friends and family. Also, software required unique activation codes. Remember, we used to get those CD keys. It was like maybe 24 characters long, and before it was online, you could actually just reuse it over and over and over again with your friend. And CD key generators as well ended up bypassing some of those, so they ended up figuring out what the restrictions were for the CD key and just creating another one. Digital art and uniqueness. So artists had created digital art before, but there was no way to do royalties on reselling of the art, and there was no way to prove the original versus the copy. And brands tried to introduce limited digital editions, but again, it was hard to verify, authenticate, and copies could be pirated. So we're going to come back to this idea of authentication, minting, I guess, but also verification and ownership. The flippening, what I call the flippening. So Bitcoin actually introduced the flippening to the world. So that is when, in my opinion, I'm going to argue here, digital goods became more scarce than physical goods ever could. So again, digital goods became the better play on scarcity than physical goods. There's one caveat I'll get into, but overall, I think this is what's happened. So before the flippening, again, you had physical goods which had uniqueness and verification bound by physics. So gold, art, luxury goods, land deeds, you had kind of physical records of these things or physical tests. But obviously the physical is flawed in a way. The scarcity is enforced by atoms, so it's really hard to replicate a sculpture unlike a JPEG, and a painting can still be done to some degree, but you can also use magnifying glass to really look at the individual features at a very fine-grained detail. So that was always a win for physical scarcity, but it was slow verification, especially when the work is important, like million-dollar pieces of art or ancient sculptures. It was vulnerable to fraud. Of course, if you didn't have access to these experts, which most of us don't, you've got fake Rolexes, forged paintings, and alike. And of course, it's hard to transfer. If you wanted to ship over basically a rare painting or a bar of gold, you have to actually send it versus sending a digital file. So after the flippening, the world we now live in, what ended up happening, right? So with the Bitcoin blockchain technology, digital assets became better at uniqueness and verification than physical gold. So they both became more unique and more easily verified than physical goods. So you have instant verification. Physical could take days for appraisal, but with digital, it's on-chain proof, which is in seconds. We've talked about how before all that wasteful energy spent on making writes to the database extremely hard. What comes out of that, though, is extremely quick and easy reads, which also have within them, they're also more secure, basically. So the reads, you can trust the reads because it was so hard to write to the network, and that energy was expended on network security. When you're reading the network, you can be pretty confident that the history there in the ledger is actually correct. So we had fake Rolexes, limited time sneakers get restocked. So we've got this kind of unhackable scarcity. So with the physical goods, you can have fakes, you can have things be restocked, you can have the company go against its own word. But with blockchain or an NFT collection, it's much harder to do. Again, you can still kind of maybe get all the nodes together and tell them, hey, we're going to adopt a new version of Bitcoin that has 22 million Bitcoin or 50 million Bitcoin. But it's going to be extremely, extremely difficult. It's not up to one individual participant or node to make that happen, and so far it's been nigh impossible. Frictionless transfers, of course, you have shippings, you have customs, you have shipping the goods, the sneakers, which could get lost, or they could be stolen or something else. I mean, obviously, a very valuable digital painting or moving digital gold bars is very risky. And in fact, people do get killed actually doing this, like transferring even money, just regular money in those money trucks that go to the bank. So it's a risky proposition. And of course, there's frictionless transfer in Bitcoin. You can just get to one person's wallet. You don't even need to know their name, so it can be anonymous, and you can just send them. You can send the winner of your raffle or whatever the hell you're doing, Bitcoin or an NFT. Immutable history, of course, we talked about how we've got that. We spent so much time on writing to the blockchain and redundantly securing that blockchain across all the nodes that you actually get like extremely easy, not only reads, but you can read the entire history of where an asset or an NFT has been, and you can verify who has it, where it's gone to. You can't verify where it will be, but that'll be up to you if you're the owner of it. So the great flippening, right? Why digital uniqueness is now superior. So this is, again, the proposition that I'm saying here is that digital uniqueness didn't even exist. Digital scarcity didn't even exist. It was extremely hard to produce, and every single method was faulty until 2009. We actually cracked the code. And not only did we crack the code on physical uniqueness, but we created something in virtue of doing so, something that was actually superior to physical uniqueness. So I've got this chart here. I won't go over it, but you could pause the video and just read it. I'll explain basically what I just explained. So just to go harp on about the effortful verification. So again, we talk about effort in the blockchain is the writing to the blockchain that expends a bunch of energy, but you get a bunch of things out of it. So one thing that you get is effortless verification. So gold requires effortful verification, and that could be as simple as a visual test with a magnifying glass. You need specific tools, skills, I should say, as a jeweler to understand what's fake and what's not. So you have to have that skill with you. Obviously, if you're verifying precious art or ancient art or any sort of valuable art, you're going to need a bunch of tools as well as a bunch of time and a bunch of skill. So it's very skillful, it's very effortful, it's very costly to do this verification. And there has been in the news over the past few decades, like fake Picassos popping up, and they require verification to deny them as being real. And effortful transportation. So of course, moving a priceless painting, we like to say that word, but it has a price. A $10 million painting is a very stressful and effortful thing to do. And storing it is also pretty stressful. Storing Bitcoin can be stressful, I will admit, of course, but storing valuable art even more so, I would say. And effort in storing as well as transporting gold, very costly. So crypto superiority, we talked about this in other videos, but just the fact that you can have a little rudimentary wallet like the Electrum wallet here, and you can actually just start sending Bitcoin to anyone that you'd like at any point in time, and you can do it fairly seamlessly, maybe 20 minutes for it to settle. And of course, you can store it. You can store it an infinite or indefinite number of Bitcoin, and also have multiple wallets on your hardware wallet. So you can have multiple different accounts, and you can store as much as you'd like. Okay, so diving into NFTs. So we talked about digital scarcity and why Bitcoin really does beat the pants off of regular scarcity in the physical world. There is obviously one caveat I actually should have got into, which is that it's very hard, or impossible, basically, to change the amount of gold that will ever exist on planet Earth. Of course, you can mine an asteroid and get it that way, which is definitely coming in the future, but the far, far future. Gold, in theory, Bitcoin, you could actually get enough of the hash power on the network together to agree to a hard fork, and you would create something that's different than the Bitcoin we know today. But you could create a Bitcoin star or Bitcoin plus one or whatever you'd like to call it, where it has 50 million tokens, or it in some other way undermines the scarcity and the sanctity of the covenant that the Bitcoin network currently provides. So it is theoretically possible, and we're also going to talk about how NFT providers can modify smart contracts and betray the service. But the thing is, it will always be done in the open, and that's the one caveat that we're going to talk about. NFTs, everyone's heard of this term before, non-fungible token. It's a unique digital certificate stored on a blockchain, right? So usually it's a blockchain that also allows for layer 2s, but Ethereum, Solana, these kind of blockchains can provide an NFT. And what it does, it gives you ownership. There's only one person who owns that specific digital item. Authenticity, so you know what the original is and it's not a copy. And you can do scarcity, so you can create an NFT where it's a one of one on the Solana blockchain, and there'll be no others that will be created like it. Or you can create a collection. You can create 1 out of 100, and you can send it to 100 different people. or you can also create your NFTs as being infinitely generated. So they are unique. Each one that's being created is non-fungible. That it is not entirely equivalent to another piece, because it has its own history, its own sales history, its own unique tag. But you can reuse that, and whatever that NFT is supposed to signify, whether it's an art piece or a music piece or ownership or perks program, you can create more and more of that specific NFT. So you can create like 100 of them, but each one is unique. NFTs infused with smart contracts. So this is where it gets really interesting. There is a video of Mark Cuban. I think he's probably a smart guy. He knows a few things about business. He's very interested in NFTs, and he's been talking about them on a few podcasts for a few years now. So definitely something to research. Don't take my word for it. But he actually, I think he owns a company now, like an NFT marketplace or something to do with NFTs. He's actually put his money where his mouth is. NFTs can automatically, with smart contracts, you can get NFTs to automatically pay royalties to creators on resale. You can unlock VIP perks. So if you own this NFT, then you're going to get special access to, or first dibs on tickets or discount food, or a benefit like when you buy $1,000 worth of luxury goods, you get this extra handbag or this extra like little makeup kit or whatever it is. And the NFTs can evolve, so that they can evolve in terms of the what they're granting you. So the NFT, the value in the real world. Oh, and the NFT might reflect it in the real world. So you can hook into an oracle like Chainlink that can inform your smart contract chain, and you can have a clause within your token or smart contract that says, if it rains tomorrow, or if the Red Sox win the World Series, or if Trump gets elected or whatnot, pay out this much to these various token holders. So you can do all the logic you want and have it automated. Perks is tradable assets. This is one of the main things I want to talk about, which is that your perks are tradable. So in other words, let's say you have a sneaker brand drops an NFT. That NFT might grant exclusive access to limited time drops. You might get early access. You could get discount codes, maybe 10% off for life, or 10% off your first purchase of $500 or more once a month or once a year. You can use these things as IRL events, so only people with the token or with this perk can access. In fact, I went to a crypto event recently, and I think it was called the You're Not Invited Boat Club, and it was only for owners of the Bored Ape Yacht Club NFTs. The cheapest of which at the time last year were selling for like $10,000 each, so very expensive if you wanted to get into that boat cruise. So the results is that the holders can sell their perks to others, right? Another result is that a new marketplace is created for token holders who can complete challenges to earn the tokens and provide value to the brand. So the brand can specify what are high value activities for the general public or for people who are interested in their scene to do, and then they can create reward systems where people earn their tokens for doing those activities, right? And the tokens grant perks. They could grant perks, and as such, they can be liquidated into cash via third-party marketplaces that facilitate NFT trading. So once I have this this perk, let's say, that's granted to me by owning, let's say, 100 of the Nike coins or the Nike token, that can be liquidated to real-world money because someone else might be interested in that perk, because that perk actually, again, has real-world consequences, right? You get maybe a discount from Nike, or you get recognition by the brand. Maybe you get your name inside of their commercial, like whatever it is. They could do anything. They could do any amount of things to cause this kind of marketplace of activity to happen. And tokens can provide perpetual perks, and that creates a feedback loop for further interaction into the ecosystem. So Pudgy Penguins is one where you buy this stuffed doll or stuffed toy at Walmart, and you get an NFT along with it. And people who own Pudgy Penguins can then get airdrops. So the platform itself can drop tokens to you, and those tokens can be sold for money, or they can give you, obviously, these NFT perks. So true ownership. So NFTs are like owning Disney stock instead of a park pass, and you profit from the brand's success and you can't get it taken away from you. So it's kind of like, it's actually beyond even stocks, because stocks, you could kind of shut down the New York Stock Exchange or kind of exclude certain people, get blacklisted from trading in US equities. But you can't do that on a blockchain. So it's going to be very, very hard to stop people. You could potentially, the people who own the smart contract could submit new smart contracts for their perks program and blacklist certain wallets. So I don't want to say it's impossible, but it'll all be public. It'll all happen in real time, and everyone will be able to read this in real time. And I think that's very interesting. So decentralized versus centralized. So why decentralized though? Like why do we need this, Adam? And so it's like owners have have a truth of ownership that isn't ownership is true and it's not contingent on the brand or the company or even the country. The smart contracts define the perks and they can be viewed and verified by everyone. Older smart contracts are public and immutable. Immutable means you can't actually change the older smart contracts. All you can do is write a new smart contract that will override, like will supersede the old one, but it's still visible for everyone. So if someone changes their rules when they said they wouldn't, brands sometimes have a perks program and then they change it midway through, even though they promised they wouldn't. Everyone can see that, and it'll actually affect the real world prices of these tokens that are trading on the market. I didn't actually mention this in the slide, but I guess I'll just bring it up now. I didn't mention it in the slide deck. Trump just, as of yesterday or today, I think it was yesterday, he announced that the top 200 holders of the Trump meme coin were going to get, 20 holders of the top Trump meme coin were going to get exclusive meeting access to him. So I think it's a dinner. And that just shows my point exactly. So the Trump meme coin is not useful at all, but the Trump brand and access to Trump is, and Trump is able to monetize off of that by creating a meme coin. And then that meme coin is just a meme coin. It doesn't even promise to have utility. But because it's on the blockchain, we can verify who owns what, and then he can arbitrarily come by and say the top X amount of holders will get access to me, or the top. Obviously, this is perversion. I don't think we should be doing this in politics, by the way. But I'm just saying, like, it's actually happening right now. Or Nike could say the top 1,000 owners of our coins get like this kind of reward. Or they could say it doesn't matter if you how much you own, but it's how much you move around, you trade back and forth, how many challenges you complete. So we've got a web platform that enables you to upload things and stuff, and then or even like we're tracking your heart rate and you're uploading that to our system, and people who achieve a certain amount of heart rate consistently will be rewarded the tokens, or vice versa, something like that. So there's no requirement on permission to sell or grant gift these tokens as well. So that's true ownership, is that I don't need to, once Nike gives me these NFT tokens, I don't have to go through Nike. I don't have to go through their platform. I can go through a third-party platform, and then I can put these up and sell them. So there's no brand or company or country that can forcibly remove the tokens from you once you have them. And so again, we talked about the transparency. Bands can abandon the NFT perks, or they can betray them or override them. But I'm just saying, unlike traditional loyalty programs, it's going to be public and on the ledger, and people will be able to see this. And it could actually crash the other NFTs that are being priced live in the market. So there's going to be backlash. And this actually happened with Bored Ape Yacht Club. I just mentioned them earlier. The holders revolted when they started diluting the perks, and it forced more transparency. So last thing I'll say is just about video game analogy. So imagine a game like Marvel Rivals, or an online game, or a shooter like COD. It only remains relevant if players keep playing. So specifically for online games, and thus part of the marketing can be to directly paying the players. So specifically, if players do high value things, let's say join a ranked game, or farm for certain gear, or maybe even like help other players if it's kind of an MMORPG and they join up with their guild or whatever, you can hand out tokens to reward that behavior. And thus a viable strategy, a marketing strategy for a gaming company in particular, is to earn money, right? Earn money when you initially launch the game, and then to share that money back in the form of tokens that are exchangeable for money that actually have value when the community does things that basically reward your game. And so you create this kind of cycle where you have profit initially from the initial game launch. You then reward players for doing certain behavior. That behavior strengthens the ecosystem, and then you earn more profit because you strengthen the ecosystem. Or if you're not earning more profit, you bleed out profit less. And you end up making more than if you didn't do this behavior, because you're actually giving value back to the players, and that's causing them to do positive things in your game ecosystem through a feedback loop. MapleStory, I think this is one of the biggest like web-based RPG type games. It's out of Korea, I believe. They've explored creating an NFT universe. This is a side adjacent to their core game, so even they're looking into it. But I believe eventually they will integrate NFTs into the game. But because NFTs and crypto as a whole has gotten such bad publicity, a lot of game studios are really worried about putting any sort of NFT feature into their game, because it just seems like they're trying to basically rug pull their community or take advantage of them in some way, because by and far 99% of tokens that have been created are basically rug pulls and valueless. Axie Infinity is actually built from the top down as a Web3 game. So this is my last slide, I believe, here. And I just want to mention this as a very innovative thing. So there is a YouTube video that actually describes the bad part of this. And I believe it's that YouTube video that like took down crypto last bull run, has like over 1 million views. So he goes over like the dark side of Axie, but irrespective of the dark side, which we could talk about, and it's valid. I just want to describe how they've done things, and this is very interesting for me and very inspiring. So they kind of either players pay or grind to get top axes. So you have your choice if you're a game developer, and then you can allow those players who have put in the work or paid the money to own these really high value axes. I'm assuming that they have higher stats or they have unique traits that allow them to battle better. You can then, as an owner of that, loan out your axes to tournaments that have cash prizes. And also, you don't have to pay to join the tournament. So let's say the tournament is partly funded by the actual funds from Axie Infinity, but partly it's funded by registrants, right? So it's not, if you go to a TCG game club night or something, you might pay $10 to enter the draft, and then whoever wins earns the majority of that money that everyone paid to enter, right? So as an owner of an NFT, you don't have to take that risk. You still take the risk of owning the NFT. The NFT's actual value could go down or up in the marketplace. But in terms of entering tournaments, you don't have to pay any money. You can allow someone else to rent the Axie from you. They can play the tournament because they're very confident in their skills and they've got the time. And then if they win the tournament or place in the tournament and get a prize, you will automatically, via smart contract, get back a percentage from them that they agreed before they rented the Axie from you. So they go to the Axie rental, the store, the marketplace store. They see what's for rent. They jam their team up with high power Axies that somehow maybe synergize with each other. They go play the tournament, and of course they're betting on themselves. Basically, if they win, they automatically get a cash, some sort of prize or token or a cash prize minted out to them in stable coins, and then you automatically through the smart contract get a certain cut of their prize money right away because they rented the tokens from you. And so you can see someone who would play this game really competitively, maybe the top 10 in the world, they go to a tournament and they have to rent 3 Axies. They got a bunch of their own, but they end up renting 3 Axies, and the prize money gets split proportionately to each of the owners of those 3 Axies. And so you can, as an owner of Axies, you can rinse and repeat. You can constantly lend out your Axie over and over again. But the interesting part, just as we talked about digital scarcity, is that you can only rent out your Axie one at a time, right? So it acts like a physical good that can be transported instantaneously. If the Axie is already rented out for a tournament, someone else can't come to you and try to rent out the same Axie, because it's enforced by the blockchain. Okay, I just want to talk about that. That is kind of like the how I'm seeing marketing really expand and explode based off of crypto. I believe that it will eventually happen. I don't know when. I'm not as confident as in it as that Bitcoin story that I talked about before. But in terms of these non-Bitcoin blockchains, these proof-of-stake blockchains, smart contracts, NFTs, what is the main benefit? I do believe that marketing and gaming are going to be huge spaces for them to eventually develop. And of course, real-world assets, which I might talk about in a future video. Once again, that's Adam from Satoshi Chain. If you enjoyed this video and you like the research that I did create these slides myself, and I always put in a little bit of time. Please give me a like, give me a subscribe, let me know that I'm on the right path here, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.